Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My drive north continues and it is getting more beautiful by the minute. I remember why I miss the north so much. You can see I found this fantastic place here by the river. And a big question I'm getting asked about a lot is, what about camping? What about where do we stay? How much does it cost? What are the different options? Both while we're on the Alaska Highway and then elsewhere as well, actually in Alaska or up north in the Yukon on the Dempster, all of that kind of stuff. That's what I'm going to go over today. So we'll cover all of the different options. I'll talk about how much each of them cost. And then of course I'll get to my personal favorite, which is wild camping. Obviously I could wild camp right here without a problem, although I'm sort of cheating this time because I've camped here before about 8 or 9 years ago. So I remembered this one. But I'll go over how you can find great wild camping as well. And yes, it really is possible. So come with me as I keep exploring the wonderful Alaska Highway. So let's get back on the road and I'll talk while I drive again. In the meantime, I'll keep showing you the beautiful scenery so you get more of a feel for what it looks like up here. You're probably going to notice the road is even rougher than it was. That's because I'm getting further north, so there are more and more frost heaves in the road. Pretty much everything underneath the road surface is permafrost, which actually means the dirt is frozen. It's really weird. When you dig a hole here, you only need to go down about a foot and the dirt is actually ice. It's really strange the first time you do it. And so what happens is, when they build a road like this, it heats up in the sunshine, and so it just starts to melt all of that permafrost underneath the road, which makes the whole thing collapse. And so they spend millions and millions of dollars building the road up really high with layers and layers of gravel to try and prevent that happening, but it still happens nevertheless. So that's why the roads get as rough as they do. And then when you add to that, they have to plow so much in the winter. You can imagine occasionally the plow just clips the road surface where it's not perfectly flat, and then it digs a chunk out of the road, and then the problem just gets worse and worse. So anyway, on to the topic of hand, where to stay when you're driving up the Alaska Highway. And the first and easiest option is to stay in some sort of hotel or a room rental. And so basically any town that's big enough to sell you gas is also going to have a hotel or some sort of lodge where you can rent rooms. And so they're not going to be Motel 6s and they're not going to be Motel 6 prices, but they're going to be like ma and pa little hotels, and they're really convenient. You know, they often have a restaurant or a way to get food as well. And for those of you that don't want to camp, you know, you're just in your family car, this option works really, really well. I really think you wouldn't go more than a couple of 100 miles without finding a place like that. I've never actually stayed in them. Even in the winter, I'm stubborn enough to stay in my car. But from what I've seen and what I've heard others say, I'd say average room price is around $150 to $180 per night. So not cheap, but obviously convenient and perfectly valid option. It would work really well to do that. As we go down the list, the next option is paid campgrounds. And so when you start at the top of paid campgrounds, imagine almost like a resort. So these campgrounds, they're going to have laundry, Wi-Fi, they probably have like a communal hangout area, maybe a games room. They have electricity hookups for your big motorhomes and RVs, so even up to 50 amps is no problem. They have sewerage hookups for those RVs, all of that, drinking water. It's all provided. It's pretty much like a big RV park you've seen elsewhere in the US or Canada. And so again, those exist the entire length of the Alaska Highway. They're not so common, or in fact there are none once you get remote, if you go up the Dempster or the Dalton. But on the paved highway itself and some of the side roads, you will again find these every couple of 100 miles. And also usually where they sell gas, they often have some sort of camping built in. And the price varies a lot. It kind of depends how popular the place is and what services they offer. Obviously, if you're getting a 50 amp hookup for your motorhome and all of the extras, you can spend up to $50 or $60 a night. It gets really expensive. Or hopefully you can negotiate and get nothing more than a piece of grass to put your tent on, and maybe then it's only $30 or $40 a night. And the thing to mention here too is typically in the summer, this summer's a lot different because of coronavirus, but typically there is an enormous amount of RV traffic. So people in huge motorhomes who've driven up from the US, and they roam the north all summer long. They have a fantastic time. But what that means is these paid RV parks, they get really, really busy. Most of the time they're booked out in peak summer, so July and August, and you would have to book days, maybe even weeks in advance. So it's not the kind of thing you could just show up and do last minute, unfortunately. And it also means when you're in this type of RV park, it's just wall-to-wall RVs and motorhomes. And when I say wall-to-wall, I mean it would be difficult to walk between them. They cram them in that thickly, and you know, most people are kind of sitting inside watching their TV or whatever else that those motorhome people do. So not my first preference, although I will say I usually stay in one about once a week, once every 10 days, if for no other reason than to use the laundry, use the shower, and use the Wi-Fi. So for me, if I have to pay $30 or $40 to get those three things once every 10 days, you know, that's not the end of the world. And that's how sort of I justify it. And that's how I find those services that I need when I'm up here in the north. A really great option for camping while you're passing through the Yukon is these government-run campgrounds that are littered all around the Yukon. And you'll find them on those tourist brochures that you picked up when you're in Dawson Creek. So I'm in one of those campgrounds now. I'm not actually going to stay here tonight. I just stopped to cook lunch, but I'll show you around and I'll show you why these things are so great. First of all, free firewood. You can see there's a big box of it right there. That's right, free firewood at these government campgrounds. They always have really clean outhouses, which is a big plus, especially if you've been on the road all day. And then I'll just walk you down. This is typically what a site looks like. And so a site is as many vehicles as people as you can fit in here. They always have their kind of little secluded area with the trees. There's always a picnic table, there's a fire ring. And so you can see you can easily fit a big RV in here. You could fit a couple of cars. You can throw up a ground tent if you want to, which is what I used to do when I first got to the Yukon. So you get a really nice site to yourself. You get free firewood, you get a clean outhouse, and all of this for the grand total of $12 per night. And that's 12 Canadian dollars. So what's that, about 8 or 9 US dollars? Yep, even for your whole family to camp, firewood included, that's a pretty good deal. And these campsites, they're always in really nice places. This one's down on a beautiful creek over here past the Jeep. So it's always worth a stop, and even if you just stop and make lunch. And another really great feature of these campgrounds is these huge, big communal cook shelters. They all have one and they all look identical. So after you've been to one, you kind of know your way around. But I really love these things. On a cold, rainy day, you can come in here, bring your food in, cook and hang out. They always have a wood stove, so you can spark that up and get it toasty warm in here. And on a busy day, there's gonna be, you know, 20 or 30 other people camping in here, and they're all gonna have stories about where they've been in the north. If you're interested in driving the Dempster or the Dalton or some part of Alaska, inevitably you're gonna bump into people that have just come from there, and they'll be able to tell you all about it. So as well as a great campground, you also get this communal cook shack and the ability to hang out with other people who are on the road doing exactly what you want to do. So while you're in the Yukon, absolutely check out where these government campgrounds are, and chances are I'll stay in one as I head further north. So I'll show you what it looks like when I'm set up camping. But yeah, this is a really great option, and what, 8 or 9 US dollars per night, it's not going to break the bank. And then of course we get to my favorite option, which is wild camping. And so what do I mean by that? I mean literally just find a place out in the wilderness where you can set up camp. And obviously this place in the wilderness, it's not going to have any services at all. There's no outhouse, there's no running water, there's no electricity, because it's literally just in the forest somewhere. But it also means the price is fantastically free. And so people often ask, you know, how do I find wild camping spots and what's that all about? Is it safe enough? And the answer is, well, yeah, it's really safe. Thousands of people do it all the time. And the easiest way to find the spots really is iOverlander, the app for your phone, and you can put the coordinates in your GPS. I'll throw a link up here of a video I did how to do it. But safe to say, you really want to get iOverlander. It's free. And as you're driving up the highway, you can just be scrolling through looking for places. It lists paid campsites, but it also lists wild camps. And I've been impressed actually on my way up this time. I've wild camped every night so far, and almost always I've chosen a place out of iOverlander. based on the description, based on whether people say it's quiet and far away from the highway, and then when I get there, if I kind of like the look of it. More often than not, it really is just a little gravel road that goes 100, maybe 500 yards away from the highway, usually kind of dead ends in the forest. It's probably a remnant of the old Alaska highway, or, you know, hunters use it in the right season. There's usually a fire ring at the end of the road and not much else. If you're lucky, not much mud and hopefully not many mosquitoes. But really, on the Alaska highway, the most important consideration is how far away from the highway it is. You'd be surprised how far the noise of trucks carry when they're driving the highway at 60 miles an hour. So what I like to do when I find a spot, park, turn off the engine, get out of your vehicle, and then just stand quietly for as long as it takes until a truck comes by on the highway. You really want to hear how loud it's going to be, because often you think, oh, this will do, this is good enough. And then later on a truck comes past and it turns out you might not get a lot of sleep if the truck traffic continues all night. Again, at this time of year, there isn't so much traffic, and with the virus, so I've been pretty lucky. But in other years, trucks will drive 24/7, and like I said, they don't go slow. These are big industrial, like mining or oil trucks, so they're on the move. So my advice, check for spots in iOverlander, see what you think, but also don't be afraid to have a bit of a look around. Obviously, if there's a sign that says no entry or keep out or no trespassing, yeah, don't go down that little gravel offshoot, but pretty much any other gravel offshoot, poke your nose down and see what you find. Especially as you get further north, it becomes rarer and rarer that there's going to be a house or a cabin down the end of that offshoot, especially if you're really far away from a town. So just poke your nose down. And if you're keeping your eye on your GPS or whatever you've got for maps, you'll see it starts to become a trend where these little gravel offshoots, they often go down to rivers, like the one I was at the start of this video, or where there's a bridge over a river, they kind of just drop down almost under the bridge. And that can be noisy, so you want to try and go up or downstream. But you start to get the hang of when you glance at a gravel road, you really get a feel for, like, does it have enough tire tracks on it that it actually goes somewhere and is used regularly? Or is it kind of overgrown and narrow and maybe just hunters use it in hunting season? And so it sort of comes down to a bit of practice. And to help you gain practice, check out iOverlander. That's the way to do it. But here's some footage of a couple of the wild camps I found. This first one was a spot in iOverlander. The second one here, where I've got some drone footage, also from iOverlander, great spot. And then the third one here up on this ridge, playing with my new drone. This spot isn't actually in iOverlander, and I decided not to add it. Sometimes I decide not to if I'd like to keep a place sort of secret or to myself. I discovered this years ago driving the highway. But there is a spot in iOverlander only about a mile away from here. So certainly if you use iOverlander, you can find some really amazing overlooks, some really beautiful places. And don't think they're going to be overrun with people. Remember, this is the Alaska highway we're talking about. There aren't that many people. So yeah, those are your options for camping and lodging on the Alaska highway, ranging from 160, 200 a night, all the way down to completely free for a night. And it's really your choice, based on the gear you have, based on the weather, based on how you're feeling. So as always, let me know if you've got any more questions about lodging or about camping as you drive the highway. I'll show you a few more of my spots as we go on with future videos. But if this is helpful, if this is the kind of information you like, please hit the thumbs up button, please subscribe to the channel, and I'm still going to film at least 6 or 8 more videos about my time here in the north, and let me know what you would like to learn about. I have a few topics bouncing around in my head, but I'd love to know what's helpful for you guys. What are you concerned about, or what would you like to learn more about, so you can come up here next summer or the summer after and have your own massive adventures. So until next time, have fun, stay safe, and maybe we'll cross paths on the road. So a really surreal moment for me here. 5 years ago, I drove out of the Yukon to set off around Africa. There was some misadventures along the way. Things took a lot longer than I thought they would. It's been just over 102,300 miles. I've driven through 39 countries on 3 different continents. And now finally, the road trip comes home. This is full circle. I've come all the way back to where I began more than 5 years ago. So really surreal moment for me. I can't believe it ended up taking 5 years. And I'm super excited now to catch up with some old friends and have some adventures here in the Yukon. And of course, I've got the Jeep to have them in. So finally, the completion of a dream.